Two of my very good friends joined the podcast today, Mike Mucitelli and Chris Roach. I got to tell you that unfortunately the audio isn't as great as I intended. It was the first time I've ever set up a three-way interview, and technology failed me. But it's okay, at least we still have some type of audio, but it's just not as high quality as I'd like. But might not be high quality audio. I do have high quality friendship with these two. It was cool talking about their history of getting into martial arts and jiu-jitsu, and actually kind of at the same time, which is funny enough, and the whole history and journey of Mike becoming a professional fighter and what it was like cornering him and all the good old days of jiu-jitsu. I especially like this podcast because I've interviewed them separately, and they're amazing people. But their friendship and the way they vibe off each other is hilarious, and it made for an even better conversation. These dudes I completely looked up to when I first started martial arts. I think when I started, Chris and Mike had just gotten their purple belt, and I looked up to them particularly because of how hard both of them worked in class and how attentive they were to small details. Fast forward 15 years or 12 years of friendship. Now they're two of my closest friends, and they're great human beings. I love both of them. If you are watching this on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and comment below one of your favorite moments of the podcast. I am very excited to finally get these two guys in the same room, and also the placement of where I sit might be my favorite part of this whole podcast. So without further ado, here is my friend Chris Roach and Mike Mucitelli. That doesn't sound like a good business model.
Well, it wasn't. That's why.
The business model sucks, but you know what is sweet? The seating arrangements.
The seating arrangements could not be better.
This is delightful. This is like a real podcast now.
This is because now it's like...
Not that you haven't had a real podcast.
Yeah. But
now it's real.
How do I direct my conversation?
Well, you could just pivot.
We definitely... This is next level.
Yeah. No, you got to turn. I mean, we'll get some sponsorships.
If we had some neon lights, this would practically be Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I'll get a gamer light. Someone look that up.
Oh, we got the machines on.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You guys have known each other for a long ass time now.
Yeah.
Are we starting? Is this was that a lead in?
We're live.
I didn't know if you were doing a thing.
No, I don't really have a thing.
I kind of prefer you just picking it up like you're in the middle of a conversation.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
That's it. When did you guys first meet? When you guys both started training?
August of 07.
We literally started training within a week.
A week. I think the same week. Yeah.
Really? Did you guys even know each other?
Nope.
No, not before that. No, we met there at that time.
No shit.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn.
Well, we just happened to be the same size.
Just kind of hit it off, yeah.
So,
right.
Well, the initial was same size, and then
actually, that's how
helped.
actually because the plan was always MMA fighting, and
for you.
Yeah, and when I got to the point where it's okay, you're good enough, you're a blue belt, you've done some training, you're working with Dennis, and they're like, okay, we need a fighter. Okay, we got the 6'6", at the time, 24-year-old, or we got the 6 even 34-year-old, and it was always we want the tall guy.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
But no, we started within a week of each other, got paired up because size, man. No
Gender.
Well, the reality was we were also a little rough and tumble. Mm-hmm. And you've coached enough to know sometimes you just got to point those guys at each other.
Don't you think though when you guys were training it was vastly different than
it was completely
not even
world.
close.
Yeah, how would you say?
Oh, well, I mean, it was all MMA all the time back then, more or less. I mean, it was jiu-jitsu based, but it was rough.
I'd say now we get a lot of people that just come to take a lesson. Yeah. Back then it was more of a lifestyle.
Well, also nowadays, I mean, jiu-jitsu's in a different place, obviously. People come in now to train jiu-jitsu.
Keep going, I'm listening.
Back then, people just came in to learn to fight more so.
Yeah, it was more to learn to fight, learn to do MMA, learn to...
Even if it wasn't MMA, it was still, I want to fight.
Right.
I want to be... Because people didn't, it was just coming out of Gracie VHSs, Gracie Challenge VHS. Dennis tells you that
2000... What did you say, 2006?
7?
Yeah, so I mean, it wasn't really even that popular. I don't think
No, very
Tough
good.
was on.
No, Tough was
Snipe,
not
no.
on. The UFC obviously was well in.
It was coming out of
motion.
the dark ages. Like,
But
it
it
had
was-
come out of that craziness UFC 1, but it was still, in the 20s.
Yeah, it wasn't mainstream, and right like 08, 09, it seemed to really go mainstream.
Yeah, it was a couple years in that, especially the UFC 100, the Brock Lesnar crossover, all that. That's what kicked it up. Because I still remember. I mean, this is going to be a check of your MMA chops. Like, do you remember the old Hard Rock Cafe cards?
Mhm.
Like, they would hold those UFC fights in the Hard Rock Cafe. Like, that was still very common. Anderson Silva made his debut back then.
At a Hard Rock Cafe.
And a bunch of those. They used to hold those. It was that tiny little arena. You could even see. It reminded me very much of our old fight. Like, fighting in a hotel room. more or
Hotel
less.
ballroom, yeah.
But go back, look those up. The great
For
fights.
scraps.
Yeah.
And for no money,
For
actually.
Literally.
$200.
Yeah, 200
If you were
bucks.
lucky. Most of my fights I didn't make anything for. Amateur didn't make anything. Especially because they was like, you want to sell tickets? I'm like, yeah, I'll sell 6-hour road trip to Erie, PA to a thing that no one knows what it is.
Well, and actually, if you think about it, like you were the first. Our generation was the first where there was amateur MMA.
Yeah.
Before that, like the day you set
It was
foot in the
the-
cage, it was pro.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I'm pretty sure you'd have to confirm this with Matt Zachariah, but I think his first fight was a pro fight.
Yeah.
I know Mark Stevens in the day had very few fights, but they were like pro.
Right
there
off
was
the
no
gate.
amateur.
Because New York, it was not legal.
Well, it wasn't
Well,
New
just
York at all. We
nationwide,
always
it wasn't a
traveled.
thing yet, really.
Mhm.
Like,
We
that
always
was
had
the
to
thing.
travel. This was
Yeah.
always Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New Jersey we always went to New Jersey, Ohio. But like first fights were pro fights. There was no amateur until, like I said, right around Mike's generation. My generation is when amateur was an option.
Well, just because the fight thing wasn't big enough.
Because it wasn't, right. I guess that makes sense.
New York
Because
MMA didn't come around. I mean, I used to go to the legalized pro MMA in New York rallies. I met Zuffa and Fertitta and
Chris
all that.
Weidman, I think, was that one of them
Yeah.
you had went, right?
Yeah, I met Dana. I met the whole crew.
For you guys, what
Durham.
was it that made you, like, take that leap onto the mats?
I don't know. I think I'd watched the UFC and it just seemed like it'd be something that was fun. And I was with Steven Hansen. I'm like, you know what? On Monday, I want to find
Whoa.
a place where you do this.
I haven't heard that name forever, Steve Hansen.
Oh yeah.
Holy cow, I remember
Yeah.
him.
He's in Buffalo. As far as I know, he's
Is
doing
he?
really
Good
well. I
for
talk to
him.
him every once in a while. Great guy. Still one of my best friends. But I was like, I want to find a place to do this, and I found Taikai. And back then, it was by far the only place. There was nothing else around.
Yeah.
Lenny was over in Utica, but I mean, I lived in Syracuse.
Yeah,
so.
it made more sense.
So I just went to Taikai and I went in and Ken was there. Scott used to do the enrollments, and like literally never looked back. Just from the first introductory class, just was like, oh, I love this. This is so much fun.
Interesting.
And these are my people. Like these, like you didn't realize that. I put it this way for a long time. You know the Blind Melon video where the girl's dressed like a bee, and everywhere she goes, she's like, eh. And then she finds the place where all the other people are dressed like bees, and it's like, oh, I'm home.
I'm home.
That was Taikai.
And that's what it felt like when you
Yeah,
walked in?
yeah.
Was that very similar for you too?
A little different, but not too dissimilar. I had illegal MMA fights. I didn't know they were illegal. I signed up for them accidentally.
Which I
Kind of
cornered.
Allegedly.
Which Chris actually, yeah. So this is actually true. Is like the second fight. So I had my first one and I won it, just winging and hoping.
When was your first fight? You joined 2006?
Yeah, so probably about 2006. It was probably about a couple months before
Really?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, because you'd done one when you showed up.
Yeah, when I showed up.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, well, everything I learned, this is 100% true. I learned from the UFC Xbox video game and a couple friends that knew how. Yeah, you can laugh. Like, it's a laughable response.
Yeah,
That's the correct.
That's great.
And it won. It turns out if you're really big and athletic, and I just lifted and worked, and I dropped a bunch of weight. I went out and I won that. I was like, let's try the real deal. Let's go to a place where I can train and get good at that, because I was a pretty good athlete coming up. I was a triple letter, yada yada, through high school. I was all-star, all this.
It was football, right?
Yeah, well, football, basketball, baseball, I was all-star in all
I
three.
didn't know.
Yeah.
Basketball
Yeah.
and baseball.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was a DH.
I didn't know that. I have no
Never
idea.
played
He's
the-
6'6" at a Catholic school. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
I
going to
mean,
be on the
it's
basketball
But-
But
team.
it was citywide. It was all CNY, post standard.
Yeah.
Thank you, bit of a publication. No, but so I did that, and then I came to that guy. I was like, let me see what the real deal is, and I was like, hey, I want to be a fighter. I'm like, okay, and then they pointed me at the direction of a fighter at the time, Ray, and he gave me like 14 stitches in my face in the first week. And I just was like, yeah, this seems right. I don't know why that logic clicked for me, but it was just like, I don't know. It did. It felt right. Like I want to, like Chris said, they're your people, and that's why you know, it was always a link to me there. It was like, oh, this is where I discovered it. This is where I grew through it. I just could never stop
And
it.
you had hockey, right? Like hockey was your
Yeah,
background?
that was what I always did, and then I was big into lifting. I always liked to lift, and we had just run the San Diego Marathon, actually, Barb and I.
Really?
Yeah, and that was the other kind of compounding thing. Was like, I'm in pretty good shape right now. I just ran this marathon. I've always wanted, like, this seems like something that'd be fun to do. Let's go find this. That's how I found that guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
How interesting. Do you think with the background in sports from both of you guys, was there like some applied knowledge? You were
Oh,
able to
definitely.
use,
There's definitely. We both had, I think, a little bit of an athletic advantage.
Yeah.
Compared to people who came in with nothing at all.
Right.
I think that you're conditioned to live in a little bit of misery, a little bit of pain. Like, you don't win every time. Like, there was a mental, whether you know it or not, there's a mental edge you have, and then your physical awareness, your balance, your strength.
That I think is a lot bigger. Like, and especially now being older and we coach more. Like, you learn. I mean, you undoubtedly have learned too. Like, some people have, like, you can't discount just natural athleticism. Everyone can work, everyone can train, everyone can learn, everyone can improve. But some guys got a leg up. They just do. It's just there's a natural instinct in athleticism.
Genetics.
Yeah, and we both kind of had, so we both butted heads and we're like, oh yeah, you, all right. And then that was just kind of, we just decided from then on, like, we'll beat the hell out of each other. And then, cool.
Almost 20 years later, still doing it?
Yeah, still doing it.
What do you think has kept you guys doing it for so long?
I mean, for me, it's that there's always something. Fighting to me is the most fascinating thing. Like, there just is. There's always a different card to play. You know, when there's a fight, you got a guy that is this world-class striker, and you introduce him against a wrestler, and now you have this fascinating dynamic where you watch it. And even in jiu-jitsu, it's a little more limited realm, but it's still the same thing. There's always something. Like, all the new. I mean, how many times, even in your life, have you gone through? You're like, oh, now I'm an Eddie Bravo guy. Now I'm this guy. There's always a style that's coming up, and it just keeps it interesting. And it's using your body as the tool for the job to solve these problems, which is even more. You know, I like working with my hands. I like working on cars. I like solving problems physically, and so it's always going to be fascinating. I just don't think I'll ever. I've tried to step away a couple times because Lord knows I've broken myself with training so many times that mentally and physically, like I'm done with this, but I just can't. It's just part of me, and fighting is bred into my bones at this point. Like, I love it.
It's just like how many people have we seen like just come and go?
We were talking. Miranda got her blue belt with, she thinks, 22 people.
Yeah.
And we now think there's 6 left. We were just discussing this earlier.
Wow.
The attrition rate is pretty high.
Yeah.
It always has been. You know, if you sign up 100 people in a year, but 100 people quit, you haven't really grown your population at all. I mean, from our generation, we're the only 2 still around.
Yeah.
I mean, even Dave and Darius, who are still kind of technically around, they were the only ones before us.
Right.
They're kind of gone.
They'll pop in once every couple
the
of weeks.
thousands of people we've seen come and go over the years, it's just like, I can't. Not many people stick with it, and for various reasons. Some physically get beat out of it. Some life changes. Some get bored with it. But yeah, I mean, the people that have come and gone over the years, just so many.
For you, like, Mike kind of likes that physicality. Like, for you, I mean, dude, 20 years, a long time. That's
I enjoy, like him, I enjoy the physical challenge of it, the problem-solving aspect of it. I enjoy the social component of it. I've always said that we're on a mat trying to strangle each other, trying to break each other's limbs. This is my bar after work. This is my softball league.
Yeah.
This is my bowling league. Mine's a little more intense.
We've talked about that a lot, and it's something that I think is in danger of being left behind a little bit in jiu-jitsu in particular. But you can preach to it too, having gone through fight camps. Like, in the old MMA classes in particular, you get through that sparring session, that grinder fight camp that everyone's doing together. There's just this cathartic, everything's gone afterwards where you're hanging out with friends, and there is not a stress anymore, and you never meet guys that bonded closer than dudes that just beat the piss out of each other moments ago. Like, there's that no more thinking about the day, your body is spent, your mind is spent, and you're just there with friends, and
that's the shame of it
irreplaceable.
now, is we have so many people who duck a good challenge. And to Mike's point, the best MMA classes are the ones where somebody got knocked out, somebody got a cut eye, somebody got somebody not injured, damaged wise, but like, you got banged up, you caught a knuckle under the eye, you caught one on the temple, you got tested. Those were afterwards the best times. And the next class was always a great class. Now we've got so many people who they want to come in and take a little lesson and roll around, or maybe not roll around. And I think Ken's most recent sort of epiphany of you can't get promoted past blue belt unless you actively roll is a really good thing, because I think jiu-jitsu is in danger of getting real soft.
Yeah.
And I see it. I mean, I see the group that we came up with, and I see the group we have now. Now, you're not going to get, like, if it was all people like me and Mike, we wouldn't have the numbers we have.
No, yeah, it's kind of unsurvivable for a bunch of psychopaths.
Yeah, I travel to a lot of schools, and a lot of places I go, 90% of those people on the mat are tough guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say we're kind of in danger of slipping the other way. Like, we should have more tough people. The people we've got are really tough. I mean, I would argue that we have the toughest group in most of upstate New York. I mean, come to Shark Tank, as you do.
Yeah.
You've got 6 or 7, 8, 9, 10 black belts. You've got brown belts. You've got purple
crazy.
belts. And you get people from other schools. So it's not always all Thai Kai guys. But show me another school with, I think, 11 black belts.
Yeah. Well, on top of it,
but also those black belts are
badass.
They're
It's
badass.
like you rolled with all of them.
Yes.
They're not. There's no
It's
cushions.
him. It's me. It's not like promoted just because you stuck around long enough. Like, these are tough guys.
Right.
Steve is a nightmare. To this day, that guy is an animal.
Yeah.
You know.
How do you cultivate an environment that's?
Well, that's kind of the tricky part, and that's, for what it's worth, something that I try, and I know he has too, try to instill in the attitude of the class that you raise, because it is a real thin line. I mean, the reality is you want to grow numbers, you want to have people, but you don't want to sacrifice your core ethos to make it happen, you know? And that's a big part of me, is I never want to water it down to the point where it's unrecognizable. And that is where the danger is. And it's great to see jiu-jitsu as a whole become so mainstream. You know, celebrities do it, it's on TV shows, action movies have jiu-jitsu sequences in it now. Like, I remember, I probably shared the clip with you back in the day of an old, you know, action movie from, you know, the Japanese action movie, something like that, dubbed over, and the guy's doing a double leg and an armbar, and we're like,
whoa,
MMA,
holy
like,
cow,
not,
we got to see it.
Yeah, not you know, crazy kung fu backflips. That's not realistic. You saw realistic combat made to a movie, and that was exciting, you know. And it's out there, so more people are interested in it, but most people aren't interested in the level of discomfort that you have to go through to really find what the good part of jiu-jitsu is.
And to get good at it, to get actually good at it, where you good in practice.
Mm-hmm.
If you can master a move, if you can't hit it under pressure, you might as well not even know
It's
it.
kind of useless at that
Board
point.
no
Yeah.
hit back.
Yeah. And I think in
famous
general, the trend has been to promote people ahead of where they should be. And it's some schools are really bad about it, some are really good about it. Like, some schools I go, a black belt's a black belt, a brown belt's a brown belt. Other places I go, a brown belt's maybe a blue belt.
Right.
You know, blue belt really shouldn't be a blue belt. And that's, you just hate to see this go like other martial arts and just get watered down and made to cater to the masses. That's not what this is about. It's not what it's ever supposed to be about. I mean, the original UFC was not as violent as it was for the sake of violence. The original UFC had no rules because they didn't want anyone to have the excuse of, well, I would have beaten jiu-jitsu, but I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. Like, okay, then there's just no rules. Do whatever you want, wear whatever you want, have your hair however you want. It's no rules. You can't gouge the eyes. You can't directly strike the groin. Other than that, do whatever you want. And that was why they did it. And like I said, I don't want to see it get watered down. Our noon class, I dare anyone to come to a noon class and find an easy roll, even if it is like a white belt or a yellow belt. And I'm proud of our noon guys. I think we have the toughest guys in the place. You know, those guys go to night class and they run the table. And even if they're not the most technically talented, I want them to be tough. I always tell them, I don't really respect, no, I shouldn't say I don't respect. I don't admire talent, I admire toughness. And I'm intimidated by toughness way over talent.
Why? Because like it's consistent.
Because you know that they've been to those deep dark places. Like, I always say this, you might have a 3-stripe black belt who's super talented and technical. I'm not that intimidated by that guy. You give me a 4-stripe brown belt who's got 7 MMA fights, that guy's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, right. I get it.
And not to say you'll win or lose to either, but those guys who've been to those bad areas, in those bad places, in those tough spots, you know, they've been this close to dying on the mat. That's the toughness I admire. And certainly you have to have talent, you have to have the moves, you have to know all your stuff. But I'm much more intimidated by a guy who's just, you know, a little bit good but real tough than real good but not tough.
Well, because you know, I mean, as much as we want to preach and die on the tree of technique trumps all, there is a reality to a fight. where just sometimes the gritty, nasty dude will wear down someone that, you can't do the technique if you've mentally broken. You know what I mean? So that's why I do think it's important to keep that edge on jiu-jitsu. Keep a little, there's got to be a little violence. The reality is you're training how to be a master at violence. If you take away that little edge, then you're just a master going through the motions. You got to be able to be pushed without breaking and still do the things and that's what toughness is. At least is just not giving up. It's just not acquiescing to a bad position, to a threat, but making themselves have exhausted every option before going out, whatever it is.
It's like I feel like the only way to really display toughness is like just by leading by example, but even that, like, you can't control people's personalities.
And it does get tough because, again, on the mats, egos get involved, and then you taper this thin line between someone just being tough and someone bullying a person that's smaller than them, or someone that's just spazzing out and abandoning technique altogether. I do think this is important. One of the big differentiators I see, if you're trying to be a blue belt, you got to be able to handle pretty much anyone that walks in and has no training. And because there are tough guys on the street. There are people with mental toughness that will spaz and move and throw their bodies all over the place.
And we'll see red when they get angry.
Yeah, just see red, bro. You don't get it. But that's what I'm saying, is you got to be able to handle those dudes, because at the core, jiu-jitsu is against handling those dudes. It's a littler dude taking on some guy that's just tough as nails and doesn't know a damn thing.
Now, if you guys were redoing the structure, lowest bar to be a blue belt, beat anybody who walks in.
I wouldn't even say beat, just being able to control. Yeah.
Handle it.
Yeah.
To get cracked and realize, like, okay, I'm okay. Yeah. We have so many blue belts who never took a hard shot to the face. And it's like the familiarity with, that hurt. I didn't like that, but I'm okay and I'm still coming.
Yeah, the panic that you have to learn to shut down in your brain.
One thing I hate when people are, I'm tired. I ate too much. My hand hurts a little bit. Okay, then tell the guy in the parking lot when he jumps you that, not now, I ate too much.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, toughen up a little bit.
Time out, I just had dessert at Tully's. I can't.
Yeah, now's not a good time. I'm just not in the mood for this.
Yeah.
I didn't sleep well last night. I can't keep my wallet in my pocket right now.
This is a rant at large, but it's more or less at the UFC currently, honestly. Is you see guys all the time, you're like, he did this and then this, that's why I lost. Well, yeah. At no point did I ever walk into the cage feeling 100%. Not once ever. Not any fight, not any grappling match. I've never felt like everything is perfect and falling into place. Something hurt. I was too cold. I didn't warm up enough. I warmed up too much. My finger sprained. I slipped on the way in and I hurt my ankle. I'm hungry. I have to poop. Like, there's something at any moment in that fight, and you got to get through it, because now you're locked in a cage with a man that wants to murder you. So deal with it. And I think like that, you see guys all the time. Like Chris said, I'm gonna sit and well, are you hurt or are you injured? Like, there's a big difference between the two. Are you discomfort or are you broken? Like, are you at risk of doing damage? And only the person can honestly answer that. As coaches, you can kind of see it in their movements. All of a sudden they start limping whenever you look at them, type thing. Or, and you just have to find a way to guide people away from those kind of mental habits, and that is really tough.
And it's just, that's just hard, because you can't, what's the adage in business is you can teach someone to do something, but you can't change their personality. So it's really hard to change the drive to be there. Like, when I started, I was doing MMA, and you guys, I think, were blue belts at the time.
Probably
2009, I think.
Maybe just probably would have been blue belts.
Yeah.
But when I was training around you guys, I just loved the idea of training around. Mike was becoming pro. We had who else was pro? Mark Stevens was
Mark,
coming.
you had Jamie.
Right, Jamie. So I was around all these guys that I was like, damn, these guys are and what I liked too about the MMA class, it was we had fun, but it was everybody was always locked in and focusing on whatever Dennis was running, wherever we were running for that night. And it was just a different core of dudes that were there to party and have a good time, but also we were
like you said, that focus, I think, stems from the intensity. You couldn't afford to go into an MMA class with your mind elsewhere, and with a lack of discipline and with a lack of focus, or someone's going to crack you.
Yeah, you can't be
or you're going to get picked up and thrown. Things are going to go bad.
Out of all the years, especially because you've cornered him so much, what's like the one venue you guys got to go to that was?
That's got to be Mohegan, right? We fought in Mohegan.
Mohegan, yeah. Are you talking favorite
Favorite or one of the most visited?
I thought the coolest
Favorite.
was the one in Atlantic City where we got to eat in the cafeteria.
Yeah, that was pretty nice. Because that was the big casino. It's gone, right? What was it?
I don't know if that one's gone. No, it's Tropicana. That's
Oh,
the one.
Tropicana.
I thought the other one that was cool was Tunica, Mississippi.
I
Only
thought that's where
because-
you were going to go because it was on a boat.
Well, not only was it on a
Technically.
boat, but that was the first time
Don't
you
you
saw
ever
like
forget.
that high level of production. Like if they say you're
Yeah.
walking out at 7:57 and 32 seconds, on that second you're walking.
It was
It is
fascinating.
timed to the second.
Oh, wait,
that
hold
was
on.
that,
It
that was
was on
my
a
big
boat?
break. Yeah.
That was his
Oh.
big break where he
That was-
beat that guy from
Van
Virginia
Buren,
Beach.
yeah.
Matt Van Buren, yeah.
Yeah. I took that fight on like 2 weeks' notice. He was going to be they were grooming him to be the light heavyweight champ, and I tapped him in the first. And am I allowed to do that to the camera?
Yeah,
All
sure.
right. He's not gonna watch. It's like Matt Van Buren is one of the few people that I didn't really get along with after I fought. There's like 2 people in my entire career that I didn't like after fighting. Matt was,
Yeah.
Me and him, we didn't. He wasn't real cool. He's
Well,
not a
you
cool
were
guy.
the huge disappointment for him.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
was-
that's a real day
You
ruiner.
were brought in to lose,
And
and that didn't go that way. It really did. It had to be a huge setback for him if he'll be.
Oh yeah, monstrous. He went on to win the Ultimate Fighter later on, and he went on to beat the Russian from Team Balance.
Oh yeah, no, he did Basil.
No, not Basil.
Basil.
He's the Egyptian.
I know what you mean, but yeah, if you think about how big
Yeah,
of
he's
a
a beast.
setback that
He
was for
dropped me
him,
in fight camp.
that had to be a bad day.
Oh god, yeah, it was a real bad day. So he might have been going through some stuff, but
Did you ever
regardless.
anticipate jumping in and cornering him?
Well, yeah, because
How did that
back
go?
before we did it, he did an illegal one held by a preacher down in
Yeah,
Oneonta or
with no
someplace
teeth,
like that,
yeah.
or Gloversville.
Yeah,
something
well,
like
I thought we talked about it on the first time
Yeah,
I was
I'm
on
pretty
that
sure.
accidental signing
don't-
up for the fight.
But I don't remember it being a preacher.
Yeah, no, the
Or
Reverend,
Reverend or
the
something?
Reverend James Malooly.
Yeah, Reverend.
That boy had 3 teeth to his head. It was
They had-
so
they had
wild.
a kid- they
He was
had a-
on the card.
They had a child's MMA fight,
Oh, boy.
and the kid got choked unconscious, and it was a wrestling ref, and so he didn't realize, and we're like, the kid's unconscious.
It was like a
he was
15
unconscious.
count.
That choke was locked in for like 15 seconds.
Like
Oh,
brain damage levels.
Yeah.
The Reverend fought on his own card.
He did?
Yeah, he lost.
Did he go by the nickname, the Reverend?
No, that's just his actual title. He was the Reverend James Malooly. I don't know. Again, I don't think he's ever really.
Yeah, so that was
I don't know
like,
if he's
that
alive,
was
actually.
maybe 07 or 08, and I don't think Ken even knew we were
Yeah,
doing
no one
it. It
would
definitely
take
was
it.
not sanctioned by anybody.
It was not. That was the whole thing, and that's I was like, Chris, hey, we train all together. You want to come down to the middle of the Catskill Mountains and get involved in some illegal cage fights? And Chris was like, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we did.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm in.
We're
I was
like
like, you're my kind of
No.
guy. We're gonna
No.
be.
You were just like, whatever, we'll figure it out. We
Yeah,
get
Yeah,
it.
you should. Some point you got to go back and see these old Facebook pictures. I have no idea how to wrap hands. I got finger tape. I got.
Didn't Scanlon fight on that?
Yeah,
team? Got
yeah.
Shit kicked out of him.
Yeah, I did. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, it just. Well, I mean that. We talk about that a lot. Fighting is like some guys go into the cage and lock in, and some guys go into the cage and they crack. And that's just the reality of it. Is some people aren't. They just don't got it up top, like whatever it is. And I don't begrudge anyone for it. It's just a thing that some people can't get there. If you can even get in there, I have all the respect in the world. You're someone that's made the walk a bunch of times. Has it ever been not terrifying?
No, always terrifying.
Every time. The
Yeah.
moment you get out there, there's that first instinct of like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I could go home.
Mhm.
Because you got a head on your shoulders, I've always said life would be easier as a dumb fighter. If you were we've known a couple, we won't drop names, where it's just like, go fight that. All right. And then just out they go. No thought, not a thing in their head, and they like, I won. And you're like, oh, I lost. And it's like, do you have anything to, nope, that's it. You just pointed them in the direction they went. They didn't think, hey, I might die.
Mhm.
Like, because that's a real thing that floats through your mind when you go out there.
Right.
Like, oh, I might get kicked in the head hard enough to never remember names again. Like, that's a thought.
Yeah,
Like-
that was like a real conversation. I remember Brittany and I we just started dating when I did my second fight, and the guy pulled out. My opponent pulled out last minute. I was
Mhm.
at the weigh-ins.
Mm-hmm.
I was told to step on the scale with keys and wallets in my pocket, so I
Mhm.
waited.
Yeah, so you'd wait
because
more.
they had a guy that was gonna fight at catchweight.
Yeah.
The guy was
I had an extra bowl of
6
cereal.
foot, 148 pounds or something. And
Yeah,
I
I
remember
remember that
being
guy.
like, why?
Why am I doing this? I'm not getting any money.
Why am
This
I
is
doing
like-
this? Is total. And then on the way home, Brittany being very frank and being like, "Is this what you want to do for the rest of your life? Because like, if you want to do it the rest of your life, we should probably do it right now and put our focus on doing this right now.
Mhm.
It's not something you do in the back burner."
Yeah.
And the fact of not remembering names was a real issue for me.
Yeah.
And you guys know there's no fucking money in Thai fights.
No, there's no money in anything.
No.
Or anything.
Except unless you're Dana White. There's no money in fighting.
It's like any of the top 1% make tons and like
it's worse than
like,
MMA. It's the worst. It's the
and
top 0.1%.
Well, yeah, it's the top tier of the UFC that are on the main card of the pay-per-view, and then there's a bunch of guys making nothing. Yeah. So.
I mean, I used to hustle literally to get those sponsors. I got all those nice banners hanging up. I would go door to door. I went to the Dinosaur Barbecue. I'd be like, hey, can I talk to the owner? Like, why? I'm like, well, I used to be a local fighter, and I'm making my professional debut. I'm going to be on TV. I want to see if we could work with sponsors. And they did. Same thing with P28.
So Ken, that first fight in Pennsylvania, he beat this local hero down.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
And he's like, "Hey Ken, can I have a Thai Kai T-shirt? Cause I'm on this thing." And Ken goes, "Well, you can buy a T-shirt."
Well, I don't even think it was quite that smoothly delivered. He goes, "Yeah, it's $25." I was like, I feel like you missed the sales pitch on that one.
Wait, I was fighting for you. Can I have a free?
Nope,
Well, if you think about it, that's not a shot at Ken. We were just kind of rank and file back then. Like, we weren't...
Yeah, you're just another dude.
We were guys
just
that just started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's literally my first sanctioned fight.
Right.
First time I stepped in a cage was my first sanctioned fight. We had never been in a cage
probably
before.
was making fun of you because you couldn't
Probably.
fight without.
He thought I was... Because back then you were supposed to have a blue belt and you were supposed to have
were a blue belt.
boxing
He
fights.
came to that fight.
He came to that fight,
Yeah.
but I was not a blue belt yet, I don't think.
I'm sure you were. Yeah, so the guy was a
We're gonna do
local
some math.
football coach.
No, he was a local wrestling coach.
Wrestling and
Because he was a
football, maybe.
Greco-Roman, in his prime, he was like a Greco-Roman Olympic altar.
But he cut to 265.
Yeah.
And Mike beat him. I don't even remember how. And so did you knock
I
him
broke
out,
his
or-
nose in the first, and then early in the second, I broke his nose, and he dropped down, and I took a rear naked choke.
Yeah. So then, after the fight's over, we're like backstage. I think we had other guys fighting. This guy's wife starts like screaming at me about how could we do that. Her husband's a local hero. Everyone in this town loves him. How could we come down here and do that? And we're like,
so we're not supposed to be.
he got in the cage. Like,
Yeah,
first of all, it wasn't
yeah.
even me. It was some other guy. I don't even know where he is.
Yeah.
But
That's funny.
We had a lot of road stories.
Well,
oh yeah.
What do you think attributes to your friendship, for being friends for so long and helping you each other out, being a part of the fight career?
I owe more to Chris than I can ever.
Well, I owe more. It's mutual.
I don't know. It's just when it's
Just
why are you
chemistry.
married?
It's like you get along. We just get along. We see shit the same way. We do stuff the same way.
Yeah.
Um,
And we deal with shit the same way. I mean, to say that we agree with everything would be
yeah.
horribly wrong.
I mean, I think the Holocaust was real. You're a denier.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no.
I think that's
I also heard
That's
Mike
not
thinks that
true.
the Earth is flat.
Yeah. Well, that
I
much
think
I
I
do.
convinced them that it's not.
Well, he takes a lot of those plane pictures and he posts them on Instagram like anyone cares, and
He and Joe
it's
Corella
mainly
talk a lot
to do
about
that. Did it turn into just a roast, just back and forth? Yeah, well, I mean, he's got me on the Holocaust thing, but he also, climate change. He's really big denying. on that.
Chinese myths.
COVID denying.
Yep. Nope.
I love that I asked you guys a question
The
about
pandemic.
your friendship.
Yeah, and that's so. I think you
guys
see what works
completely
here.
diverged.
Yeah.
Did we? I think we actually showed you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
No,
that's
I
a good
mean
point.
it's like I said, my counter was like, why are you married to Brittany? Like, why does any relationship last for fucking 20 years?
Yeah, just chemistry. Just
Yeah.
something you can't describe.
Yeah.
Every time I've said I think I'm gonna jump into something crazy, he was like, yeah.
I'll pay for
and
it.
for what it's worth, he's done the same. Like he's been like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm like,
I'll help you.
go for it. I'll be here. He's like, what do you need? I'll push you. I don't give.
Was it that same way in your MMA career?
Very much so. Yeah, I mean, when I got the call, I tried out for Bellator. It's weird, as I actually posted that. It came up in a Facebook.
I was
comment.
literally
I think I got the call from Jimmy.
Well, that's it.
Just
You got the
asking
call.
if you wanted to fight.
I got the call. I originally wanted to go try out because they held open tryouts.
Oh,
back
in
then.
Philly,
'Cause,
yeah.
I went to two of them. There was one in Cherry Hill and there was one in Philly, and I went to them both. And I did really well on both, but they had pretty much predetermined who they were going to be choosing beforehand because Kyle Ciminaro, who's the Olympic medalist or something like that, was there, and they're like, then we're going with this guy. But we put our names out there, and I was like, I'm thinking about doing this, and I asked, help getting fuel together, getting gas, getting hotel. We put together that, and me and Jamie went down. And you wanted to, but you couldn't make it, so you kind of helped us out with the hotel and stuff like that. And then, it was like a month or two later. It wasn't too long.
Yeah, it's always, I mean, everyone gets their break kind of the same way. Ryan Ciatoli always did really well with this. He always had a bunch of guys always ready to go.
Yeah.
And a lot of those guys got their start. Somebody would drop out, somebody get injured, somebody gets sick, and hey, I need a 145er. You got one? Yeah, I got 4 of them. Which one do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this was. When a 205er against Matt Van Buren dropped out, does this guy, Mike, is he interested?
And that was on
Bellator.
That was Bellator,
Yeah.
right?
And I, you know, originally I was like declining. I said no because I was like, fuck, dude, I'm terrified. Like, this man's gonna murder me. He's so much more experienced than me. He's been in the big show. He's fighting, and I've got 2 weeks to get ready for this fucking fight.
So we went to Ichiban,
So we do, yeah.
had some sushi.
Had sushi,
And then we're like, if you're serious about this, this is how everybody
gotta do
gets
it.
their start.
Mhm.
Like, very few people just like, I'm going to go fight in UFC, and they go fight in UFC. Most
But
of
I
the
think
time,
a lot of people think
That's how it goes.
no,
it
it's
goes, but
like I said, everyone I
not
know
quite
who's gotten that
close.
break, it's been like, hey, somebody just dropped out. We need somebody. Do you have somebody?
You need a
And
final breakthrough, some insane challenge.
Some
basically.
manager like a Ryan or like a Jimmy says, "Yep, I got a guy," and that guy is in, and then they go and do better. I asked Tamden that story. I mean, I don't remember his exactly, but like, he was doing better than he ever should have in those Massachusetts leagues,
Mhm.
and then the UFC I think needed somebody, and somebody knew Eric Charles. Asked Tamden. I'll let him. I don't want to tell his story, but it was a similar thing. We're like, "Hey, shoot, we need a guy. We need a 170er in 2 weeks."
Who do you got?
And
Well,
Tamden's like, "I can do it."
And they reminded me that like you've been supposed to lose every. Like we were road warriors. That was us because New York still was a
legal.
decade away.
Oh yeah.
And even when it became pro, it wasn't a thing I was going to get to do because of ridiculous laws, whatever. Go down that. But like they were like, dude, you were always taking fights out. I broke a kid's leg in like 30 seconds in Vermont, and then I took a fight that week, like a week after that fight. I had another one. And and that's just, we were always just being thrown into the wolves and coming out on top. So they were like, look, man, this has been your MO so far. You're picking up a hell of a time to change your mind. Yeah, so we did it. It was like,
Yeah.
well, fuck it, let's do it. Never looked back.
Do you remember what you said to him at Ichiban's? Stop being a bitch
I
and
know.
just go.
I think it was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
No,
it was.
he was much
It was
nicer.
because having known those guys and having been around like Mark and Eric Charles used to manage a lot of fighters. Like, man, everyone. This is how people get their breaks. Like, if you really want to do this, this is how it's got to happen.
Mhm.
And didn't take much convincing.
Mhm.
Just a little.
I just needed a nudge. I didn't always. I needed someone in my corner. Chris was the guy to be there in my corner. Dennis was the guy to be there in my corner for me, and they gave me that little.
Well, it also
You can
takes
do
it takes an outside person to realize how good or not good you are. Because if I didn't think he was ready, I would have said, "Now's not the time."
Yeah.
Like, I knew how good he was. It's easy to see that from the outside. It's hard to tell yourself how good you are.
You're your own harshest critic.
And it's like,
Yeah.
and Dennis and I both were confident. Like, yeah, he's got it. I think he's got it.
Yeah, and especially that goes to tell you how important having like a legitimate support group around you.
An
not
honest
just like
support
a
group,
yes,
yeah.
Well,
Yes,
that word, honest. Like you have to surround yourself with people that aren't afraid to tell you you're in too deep, and then when they tell you like, no, you got this, you can put your cash in that. You know what I mean? Like, I trusted them. I trusted their opinion, and so fuck it.
And we talked about this yesterday. We know a guy who would take those phone calls and be like, hey, I need a 185er. All right, I got a 170er who's got one fight. I'll send him your way.
Mhm.
And this guy would just go get obliterated. Like,
Mhm.
all of his fighters always just got their asses handed to them, and not because they weren't good fighters. These guys were talented guys and they were good, but they were getting thrown to the wolves. They were getting thrown to guys with a lot more experience. They were
There was
going
no
up
choke
weight
on the
class to
other
make
side.
somebody happy. And if the person really had his fighter's best interest in mind, you just said, I this guy's not a fit for
Yeah.
what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I'm not going to send him down there to just get his nose smashed.
Why haven't you guys gotten to managing fighters?
There's no
It's a
fucking
huge
money.
hassle. There's no money in it. It's a lot of time. There's no reward. And really, there's no fighters anymore. Like, we used to have a handful of amateurs and pros. We don't have any now, if you think
Yeah.
about it.
No, really
We got
not.
Tyler, kind of.
Yeah.
I think Jake will fight, at least amateur, if not low-level pro.
Mm.
We used to have guys used to come in all the time who wanted to fight.
Mhm.
I couldn't even tell you the last time we got a guy who came in who's like, I want to learn and I want to do an MMA fight.
But again, I think that ties into the evolution of the sport. How's your neck doing, by the way? Getting
Good.
loose
No, this is good. This is awesome.
Well, because again, back then, everyone fucking thought they could be a UFC star. They saw it on TV, UFC 100. Oh, that's fucking IC Red, bro. I do think that crowd has diminished a little
gone?
bit with the no.
Not gone.
I don't think that'll ever be
not gone, but
I mean, the reality was that was the vast majority of humans. Like, most dudes thought that was that. And we spent a lot of time breaking the noses and jaws of guys that thought they were. You ain't that guy, pal.
It takes so much longer to get good at, whether it's jiu-jitsu, MMA, whatever, or Thai, than you realize. I think, I mean, the striking arts, you seem to be able to get good at those a little quicker. Because there's less dimensions involved. And that's not a knock on them. It's
there's just a limiting rule set.
We're on the same plane. You have 2 feet and 2 hands. I have 2 feet and 2 hands, and that's all you got. Whereas you throw the grappling, the MMA, now you got takedowns. Now you're on the ground, now you're on the feet, now you're clinched against the cage. And it takes a lot longer to get good at than people realize. And I think you think you're good, and then you come in one of our blue belts is like, this submitting you, throwing you down, and you realize like, I thought I was a lot better at this than I am. It's going to take a lot longer to get good at this than I thought.
The first time you get taken down and then have to get back to your feet and fight again is usually the biggest eye-opener for someone that wants to do MMA. Because you'll get guys that have done striking for years. Like, I can do 10 rounds, not get tired. I can do 10 rounds on the mat, not get tired.
But getting down and then standing back up.
Oh. Every time I get back to my feet, I'm just like,
because the second
oh my god!
Exactly. You feel that rush go back and down, and you're like, fuck.
You're like, oh god, this is so much tiring again. But yeah, I think the reality of fighting is more out there. I still think the vast majority of the population overestimates their fighting ability by roughly 10,000%. But with that, I think that there is enough knowledge out there. Like, people realize UFC fighters are frightening, for lack of a better term.
And professional athletes. It's not just like...
Yeah, it's not just some dude. Those old UFC 1-2 days, you see Cedric Yarborough, you see these guys go on there and they're like, anyone can walk in there. Karate master. I did karate when I was 10,
But no, to your point though, I think that's what has pulled me more to jiu-jitsu lately in my life, just because like I love teaching Thai, but I also just appreciate that it's more dimensional when it comes to jiu-jitsu.
Well, do you think that's because you get a chance? You've been one of the head instructors at Thai for if I can turn this podcast shit around asking you questions for so long. Like, now, when you go back to the jiu-jitsu end, you're not the instructor as much anymore. You're still very much a disciple of it. I find it's tougher teaching to keep finding, because you have to revisit things at a core level a lot more. For new students, for white belts, for whatever. You have to revisit these fundamentals. And you want to grow past that, but everyone has to get those fundamentals. So as a teacher, you're always doubling back. Whereas a student, you get to kind of always look forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like the removing of my plate of having to like come into class with a plan and know what I'm going to do. Because like with you, like you mentioned, like when I am writing my class unit, right? Like I'm looking at old notes, I'm looking at old things, or maybe an old video Sifu did, and just trying to figure out how I can still teach it correctly. But there's a different level of pressure than when I can just walk in to Steve's class on a Tuesday.
Well, when you show things, you're always worried about that person in the crowd that's like, yeah, what if I do this? And they're like, yeah, what if they do that?
Yeah, right.
Maybe I'm wrong. There's a little bit of self-doubt, and it can be a little tricky, or you have to, at the bare minimum, find the explanation to their answer. You got to have those things. So you're not getting a chance to really work on the things that you want to work on. You're so busy tending to all the little details of that.
Now, for both of you guys, how do you guys get better at teaching overall?
I think just time and experience.
Yeah.
Just learning what works and what doesn't. And part of it, like you got to teach to your crowd. It is funny because, like, I teach the new guys, and I love them. They're all tough. They're all grinders. Even like we have some white belts, literally like white belts, but they're tough as nails. So you're teaching them one way, and then like Saturday I'm covering Ken's fundamental class, 180 degrees, that group from my new guys.
Different, completely different.
But that said, they're almost as much fun, if not more fun, to teach because they're kind of more of a sponge. So it's just kind of like playing to your crowd, knowing what's going to be over their head, knowing what they're going to absorb.
And how to like dial that in.
Yeah, and then I try and teach stuff I'm confident with, like stuff I know well. There's a ton of stuff I don't know anything about. Dennis does a lot of complicated stuff that I couldn't teach in a million years. But I've got some things I do that I'm good at, and so that's what I teach.
So you stick with the stuff that you
I just try
really...
to
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. I mean, even to expand that thought outward and stick with the jiu-jitsu, I think a lot of people want to teach Instagram shit that they see or this, that works without knowing it, without drawing it themselves. And I think as a black belt, it can be very tempting because people ask, hey, what about reverse De La Riva? And I think a lot of guys' pride is too big to say, I don't fucking know. All the time, people ask me in my class, what about this? I go, ask Dennis, ask Chris, ask someone that's good at this. Do you want to do work from half guard? Absolutely not. I'm not great at half guard. I'm not great at butterfly guard. I can use those positions and show you how to get back to your guard or to your feet. But I can't show you a bunch of that shit on it. So there's a little bit of like admitting your humility and kind of staying in your lane. But then expounding outwards, like keeping your core fundamentals, like Chris said, having drills that stick to what I believe, a little bit of toughness, directness, short movements, explosive movements that, don't be afraid to use athleticism, don't rely on it, but don't shy away from it. Just have these foundational pillars that you build off of and not try and just do what the fuck ever's cool, you know what I mean?
It is hard not to fall into like whatever the coolest shit is.
I tell you what, I focus more, especially recently, on more strategy than moves. Like if and I always tell, like say you're a blue belt and you're on top of me in half guard, be happy with that. Because I don't want you there. If you can just hold there, if you can get in side control on me and just stay there, that's great. Don't give up a position to go get a better position, because, and that's like, I think that's part of what separates like a black belt from a purple belt or a brown belt. If I'm rolling with a purple belt, even a good purple belt, they're going to make a mistake. You might be beating me up for 3.5 minutes, but I know you're going to screw up. And I'm going to do some things to help you screw up, but I'm eventually going to end up on top and make you pay. When you are rolling with another black belt, like a Dennis or a Mike, like the first one to make a mistake is going to lose that round. In fact, a lot of times the first one to get a good grip is going to win that round. Like with Dennis, if Dennis gets his first good grip on me, even if it's 30 seconds in, that first good grip does nothing on its own. But it set the direction of that whole match.
The rest of the
round.
Two
whole
weeks
time,
ago.
I'm going to lose this. Whereas if I can get the first good position, I'm going to win the match. And so kind of working on some of those philosophies with people, like, De La Riva and reverse De La Riva and Barambola and all that stuff, like, all good stuff to know. But if you're, like I said, you're a blue belt and you got me in side control, just stay in side control or take mount. Advance your position. Don't go for a spinning armbar and end up on your back, or rock back on a leg lock and end up on your back, and now I'm standing over you, and now you just had a great position and now you're in a hole. Like don't give up position for, and then a lot of balance. Like I said, just isolating arms, isolating limbs, isolating the neck, isolating arms so you can isolate the neck. That isn't necessarily move based, but just principle based.
Yeah, and that's the way I tend to teach too, is foundational principle based. Like, this is where your weight wants to be, this is where your hips want to be, this is... To that, it does become problematic, and I'm sure you run the same thing, where you find yourself saying the same thing 40 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Like, engage your core, keep your elbows tight, I say the same movements 10,000 times. And that can get tough to keep people, you want to keep them interested, but you're saying the same shit. But the reality is like the human body only bends in so many ways, and there's so many ways to maximize leverage. These are the core movements that you need to do, and then you need to find the way to expound that to the rest of the jiu-jitsu.
And a lot of those core movements kind of run through a lot of the other techniques.
Well, like for instance, like if I have someone's back and I finish a rear naked choke, I want you to engage your core, do a crunch, pull your heels in, and do that. If you have a triangle choke, I want you to engage your core, pull your heels in, and do, like it's the same idea from two completely opposite positions. And so you find yourself seeing two different moves, but then I'm teaching the same fucking thing, saying the same thing twice. Then it gets a little tricky to keep it entertaining or interesting or grab their attention, but the reality is that foundational movement is the important part of both those things. And I think that's like the biggest jump between, I'd say, like blue and purple. Like white to blue, you're accumulating moves, you're getting the ideas of things. And by blue, you have a bunch of moves. But learning when to apply them and how to get your leverage right and what that is, I'd say that's like a blue-purple jump. Then purple-brown, you're getting into, not only do you know when, but you're doing them tightly. And then that brown-black, like you said, is that you don't make a mistake, and until you, like, it's going to be the exact moment when I need to do it, and that's when I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do no more.
Your window is only in that one
that's
section.
that black belt shift. It's like you're accumulating up to brown, and then black you almost begin cutting everything away. And learning, like, I don't move if I don't need to in this position. I don't do anything extraneous. I just get to this, and then I do just that, and I wait for this moment to do it. Or I set it up by using these kind of leverages and nudges, like you were saying. But that's like that brown belt to black belt is that window gets so small. You know what I mean?
For me, I felt like when I got my purple belt, I was finding like my personality with my role when I gravitated towards. Was that about the same for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to move into your lane. I mean, those aren't the only qualifiers I have for belts, obviously, but I think those are some of the earmarks. But to your statement, like, yeah, white to blue, you're still accumulating. Blue to purple, you're still, I think, still adding stuff. Purple to brown, you begin trimming, and then brown to black, you're down to your style. But then you got to open it back up to fucking teach all these things.
Yeah,
so.
it was like I would say middle brown belt when I decided that this is how my game's gonna go. This is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
And one of those was I want to dictate the next thing that happens, whether I'm in the best possible position or the worst possible position. Whatever you do next is going to be what I let you do.
I let you do.
What that doesn't always work, obviously, but I want for the thing that happens next to be what I allowed to happen or what I forced to happen.
Well, I think
And that was a brown belt, and that's like I said, that much more like overall philosophy, but that was middle brown belt for me.
I think that we've talked about one of the higher compliments that we get is actually people complaining. It's like, well, I knew it was going to happen, just couldn't stop it. Like, yep,
Yeah,
that's what
that's
I'm
the
doing.
worst
That's my thing.
feeling. Worst feeling.
That's my highest level of compliment because it means my technique was so good and my timing was so good that even though you detected it, you could not stop it. And it's a compliment, but people bitch about it a lot.
Yeah.
What's the biggest difference between a brown and a black belt?
Color of the belt.
I mean, really, he's got you there.
I think it's true. I think it's the ability to teach it, and some people are better than others at that. I think that I listened to a couple brown belts teaching moves the other night, and it was good. They're doing a great job, but there's all these details they're leaving out, and not because they don't know, but just because you just haven't done it enough to realize like these are the things you need to emphasize, and these are the things you don't even really need to say. So I think the ability to teach it, and then like I said, the philosophies and the not making mistakes. I always remember like the best pro hockey players, they just never made a mistake. And if they did make a mistake, they covered the mistake so quickly you didn't even know they made it. And you see like all the best athletes do that. Like even if they do happen to make a mistake, they cover it up so quickly you don't even know it was made. In MMA you see that. Like they might have missed something, but they transition to the next thing so quickly you don't even realize that there was a mistake made. And I think as a black belt, it becomes more about not making mistakes and in realizing like, okay, if I get the first good grip, this grip may have nothing to do with how this match is going to go. But if I get the first good grip, I'm going to win this round. If he gets the first good grip, I'm going to lose this round. And like I said, just applying those fundamental principles. Like there's people that I'll struggle with. But if I just decide, okay, I'm going to beat this guy, 9 times out of 10 I'm going to beat him. Now, maybe not other black belts like Steve or Dennis, but like there's tough brown belts that if I toy around, I'll get caught. But if I go into that match thinking I'm going to win this match, I'm going to win it every time.
And do you think it's a matter of mindset between the two?
I think it's a matter of mindset, confidence, strategy.
See, I don't know if I agree and disagree. I think brown to black, I don't think it's necessarily because there's a lot of black belts that are black belts but can't teach a damn thing. You know, and there's been a couple guys out there that I know that are good at jiu-jitsu, but they just can never convey it. So I don't think teaching is necessarily it. But that said, I think the ability to teach it is because you understand what you're doing a little more thoroughly. Like I'd say this, at brown belt, I knew what I was doing, but I didn't necessarily know why. I hadn't broken it down yet to the level that I think would be black belt. Like I guess, like I just knew to do things. And getting to a teacher, I had to learn how to explain them. But to learn to explain them, you had to learn them more thoroughly instead of just do this. Okay, well, why just do this? Because you have leverage on this joint, and if you grab at the end of a lever, you have, and then break it down that way. So I think that knowledge is the difference. Like that break it down to the infinitesimal is the brown-black difference. But I don't necessarily think being able to convey it is a black belt requirement. That's just my opinion.
What would you think would be the big difference between black and brown? Just being able to convey the techniques?
Well, I think understanding it on a smaller level, not just what to do, but why.
But why.
Yeah.
Okay.
And knowing why very thoroughly. Now, being able to convey it to someone else is a totally different thing for teaching. But that is the knowledge that you need to teach it, but whether or not you can do it, I think is still one more jump away from black belt. But that's just my opinion.
What is the best piece of advice you guys got in jiu-jitsu?
Just keep going. Toughen up and just keep going. We still get the question all the time, text message, in person. How do I get the next belt? How do I get a black belt? How do I eventually become a black belt? And the answer is just go.
Mm-hmm.
Consistently go. We started the same week as I pointed out. Because of his MMA fights, he took more time off, so I got my black belt a year ahead of him. And it's just because I kept going. I just went more. It wasn't that I was better. It wasn't that he was. It's just like, you just keep going. There is no secret. I would think at least back when we were coming up, being tough was kind of part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these guys are going to have to toughen up a little bit too. And girls. You're going to have to toughen up a little bit.
Well, and that's what, like, just keep going. You hear it all the time. But that is, I mean, you gotta, the breadth of what just keep going entails means it's not just go punch in and stand at the lobby and be like, I kept
Text
going.
on your phone, watch, talk.
No, it means keep going and keep going to do this. Keep going, go put yourself in an uncomfortable, that you want to get good at. It's not just attendance will get you pretty far, but you got to roll. You got to do the whole thing. Like, and to just keep going, jiu-jitsu encompasses more than, just the attendance.
Attending class.
Yeah, like jiu-jitsu. Just attending class and watching someone show it is not jiu-jitsu. That's watching a play, a display.
But there's still a level of effort you have to put into it,
Right.
rather than just
You gotta go and do jiu-jitsu. You gotta roll, because rolling is doing jiu-jitsu.
And you're gonna take your off.
uncomfortable.
Don't duck Ed. Don't duck me.
Yeah.
Don't duck Mike. Like, take your beating. You're gonna be better for it. I understand it's not fun. First of all, I've never hurt anybody there. I mean, that's not true, but I've never accidentally hurt anyone there.
Mm-hmm.
You're way safer losing to me than you are rolling with a blue or purple belt who you may or may not beat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I guarantee your safety.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell, like, lower ranks white belts, like below blue belt, if you hurt me, it's 100% my fault.
Mm-hmm.
I will never hurt you. At least not, like I said, not by accident.
Yeah.
So I understand it might not be it might not be fun, but you'll be safe. I'm not going to hurt you. You'll be safe. You roll with a blue belt, a purple belt, who knows? You know, it's a wilder roll.
My only injuries from jiu-jitsu was a black eye, and I think I hurt elbow, and both from blue belts.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been hurt by people lower ranked than me. Never been hurt by somebody higher ranked than me.
Yeah, like my father-in-law was laughing because I told him Shark Tank is like me, and the next closest guy is Dennis, who's like, what is he, 170 now?
Yeah.
He's looking pretty trim, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he started laughing, and he was like, how do you not get hurt? I go, I've never gotten hurt by those guys, not even once. Like, I have hard rounds where I feel like I'm gonna have a heart attack, but Chris isn't breaking my arm.
Well, and that's the important thing that people need to learn is, like, just get through it. Just bite just bite. And
take the challenging rolls.
Because if you do it, you're less likely to get hurt than if you just toe in and half it. You know what I mean? That's when the problems happen. Is when you're not sure of the situation you're in. But putting yourself in the mess, putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation, you learn how to be in it and remain safe. And that's kind of one of the core principles, I think, of jiu-jitsu that's important to not get watered down, is going through that trial, going through that tribulation, that fear, that suffocation that we all felt the first time when you had a gi over your face and your eyes are bulging out and it's the third round and you think you're going to die and vomit and shit. Get through it. Because next time you're in that situation, you'll realize, oh God, I saw the other end of this.
Mm-hmm.
I can survive if I just do the things and stick to the things. So keep showing up, despite the fear, despite the discomfort. Keep showing up.
Honestly, that's what attracted me to real estate so much, is it's one and the same. It's like, you can be at home and dick around all day, but if you're not showing up to the office for your clients to actually
you got to put in your work.
Right, not even just showing up for attendance-wise, but like every day doing something.
This mentality will take you far in anything you do. And I tell you, I credit Ken a lot for some of that mentality, because he's kind of the ultimate grinder. He's in that building 6 days a week.
Yeah.
He's the first one there. He's the last one to leave.
Yeah.
Like, his grappling, he's a grinder mentality. Like, he's just, aside from being extremely good, he's extremely strategic. And those sort of mental principles translate to anything. It'll make you successful in anything you do.
Well, you hear all that shit all the time. Jiu-jitsu saved my life. And while it can be a little bit of hyperbole, it still isn't. Because you know how it is. When you're round 7 of open mat, you are at a primal state. Like, you're not thinking of things. Your heart is pounding out of your chest. You're sweating. You hurt. You ache. Your muscles are on fire. And you're getting through, like, you're learning how to operate under this high duress situation. And you're training yourself, and you will take that through to the rest of existence. Like, I can't count the amount of times I've been encountered with some crazy bullshit and just been like, dude, You were locked in a cage with a man that wanted to kill you in front of 100,000 people with money on the line. You can handle this today. Like you can do this.
Yeah.
That stuff takes you through. Like
That's
that
why
moment of
back
panic
to
and fear.
baseline.
Yeah.
That's
Getting brought to that primal state of your brain of like life and death and fighting through it. Then you're like, oh, everything else is toned down.
I just gotta talk in front of people for like 20 people.
Yeah.
And I went Sunday and got my ass beat by Chris, Dennis, Steve, Big Ed. I'm like, if I can do that for an hour, then I can.
If I can stand on death's door at any moment with some men that outsize me that could kill me at a moment, and I'm fighting for my life, I could probably stand up and run.
Last question. What is your favorite memory of the two of you?
God, that's a tough
That
one.
is-
I don't, you should have told us that ahead of time.
Yeah, I would give you time to think on that one. Shit, dude.
I don't know. I mean, one that we always go back to is the time you came into that hotel in
Are you gonna?
Erie, Pennsylvania.
I knew you were gonna bring this one up.
It's
and
not-
I'm gonna
it's- you know what?
defy that as my favorite.
It's not my. It's not. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's a funny one.
It's a fucking moment. That's
Barb
for
was
sure.
on our boat up in the St. Lawrence River back then, and I was driving from Erie, Pennsylvania up to St. Lawrence. I knew I had to get up early. He comes stumbling in at 4 o'clock in the morning, steps on like a shoe or something, falls, hits the corner of the room.
Can I preface this?
On his 2-inch gash in the head.
I won the local title, and I wore the belt to the bar like an asshole.
Yeah,
Because
that's
I
all.
said
Yeah,
that.
all true. All true.
I'm gonna be an asshole. I conquered your best. This is my town now. And I was last seen drinking 100-ounce beer, and then Dennis was like, I'm turning in. And I got left in the hands of some other fighters, which is blind leading the blind. And boy, there's a lot of stuff that we're going to need for the uncut version of the podcast, I can tell you this night. But with a BAC higher than my IQ at that point, I think I stumbled through the door at 4 a.m. and I fell and I smashed my head on the wall, the corner of it.
And it bled.
So loud it woke him up of a dead sleep. And I'm on the floor just going, oh, Chris.
And I think he's just being dramatic. I was like, he's just being dramatic. He's always dramatic.
Shut up, dummy. Go to bed.
He takes his hand off. The gash is 2 inches long, like an inch wide, and just blood running out like Nicole Simpson. just pumping out. So I end up.
Well,
I had
first
the
of all,
fight kit.
Mini preface. My brothers all the time, he grew up like, oh my God, you're bleeding all over. Suck it up, man. I take my hand off. Chris's literal words are, "Oh my God, you're bleeding all over," and I'm like, fuck.
There's so
I
much
take my
blood.
hand off. It's just my hand is pouring down my arm.
It was a legit. So I end up packing it with Vaseline and leaving.
Really?
Yeah.
So let's
then-
get a recap. I hemorrhage.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta go.
Like a
and then he's
cut
out the
man.
door.
Yeah. Like a cut
I did.
man.
Well, I had the fight kit because you didn't
Yeah.
have cut, man.
So I packed
you
it.
were the cut. I don't know shit about
Yeah.
cuts, but I was the cut.
And I
man.
wrapped my head in a towel and passed out.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
god. You could
they
have
end up.
died.
The funny thing is, so I had a nice peaceful drive, met Barb on our boat, in the river.
Yeah,
Nice,
right.
great weekend. Hobbs
Do you wanna
and
fill in the
Dennis-
Hobbs and Dennis part?
Dennis
There we
had
go.
to drive him home.
Perfect.
He's wearing a blood-soaked white beater and pajama pants with blood dried on his face.
Well, we need to open up the first part.
Hungover.
So they open up the door, which had not gotten shut all the way, and they like creak it open, and there's blood on the walls and on the floor, and the sink is just filled with. Because I went to rinse it out, and the sink is just filling that with blood. The bathtub, I'm like, oh, there's too much. So I go in my bathtub and I turn on the shower. So the tub is filled with blood. The sink is filled with blood. The corner has blood, and there I am. And Dennis and Hobbs both said the same thing. Oh my God, I think he killed a hooker. 100% true. No, I would never go. The woman. But I was liquored up and left in the middle of nowhere, and it was a real
My
possibility.
favorite part about that story is Chris just packing
Yeah,
it
go.
with Vaseline.
All right, I gotta go. Thanks for
I
waking
had
me
to
up.
leave early anyway. Another funny one was he's fighting in Maine, and we flew up there. Now Tamden was in the UFC, and Dennis cornered Tamden a lot. So whenever he cornered Tamden pays me. Tamden gets me my own hotel room. Tamden gets me meals. Tamden gets me my own Tamden does this. Tamden does that. Well, Tamden's making a lot more money, but that notwithstanding, we're at a
Come on.
shitty
Look, I can give shitty stories about you.
No, this isn't about you. We're in the so
the
Dennis
air
flies
mattress
in.
story,
He and I
right?
drove up through a snowstorm. Both.
Oh
of
my
us.
God, it was fucking ridiculous.
And we Dennis flies in, meets us. We only have one hotel room, so we get an air mattress for Dennis that has such a loud leak that when the room's quiet, you can hear the So Dennis goes to sleep. I got a bed. Mike's got a bed. Dennis is the last one there. He gets the air mattress. It goes flat. He wakes up. He's so pissed off. He goes to like kick the air mattress, but it's flat, so it just goes kind of. It was just like one of those like. It was like the old Mitch Hedberg joke about slamming the tent.
The tent shot.
Yeah,
It's like anticlimactic. So that was always funny.
That's hilarious.
I don't know. It's tough. We have a lot of good
I mean,
memories.
him officiating my wedding was a good one. That
was a good one.
It was a
Yeah.
good moment. It was the most gorgeous day. He was cracking jokes. It was a perfect day. He did a phenomenal job. We have his speech framed in our living room.
That was fun. That was a really.
It was a great
funny
day.
because Brittany, I think at that point hadn't really met you too much. Or really knew Stevie. I think we met Chris and Stevie at like a belt party for the first time.
Yeah.
Brittany loved your bird, and I remember Chris
Made a joke.
made a joke about
Stevie.
About
Barn.
the barn.
Yep.
Barn. And Brittany turned to me. She was like, "Did you just say Stevie was a pig?" And I said,
Well, it might have been a
I think
cow.
that's what
I
he
will
was
say,
insinuating.
Anthony
and
Johnston-
she was fucking dying.
Anthony laughed at that for like half an hour.
Yeah, like
People thanked me for that joke afterwards. A few people were like, "That's
it's
the
so
funniest
crazy.
thing."
It's so hilarious. But that's
Yeah.
on brand for you.
Well,
Yeah.
that's just it. And I think one of my favorite. Let's take my favorite memory for Chris. This was really early on. I had a couple cage fights, amateur, and there was the outdoor hockey game at Syracuse Crunch.
Oh yeah.
And it was a big deal because they hadn't held that for forever.
It was at the fairgrounds, like 20,000 people.
And I was like, "Hey, Chris, me and my buddy Kevin, I was living with my friend Kevin at the time. We're gonna go." He played hockey, and I actually helped videotape the intramural SU hockey girls team. So we are going to it. I'm like, "Chris, you gonna be there?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be there." I was like, "Cool." So I was like, "Well, I'll look for his truck." At the time, he had a sticker on the back of his truck, Real Fightwear. So he's like, "Look for my truck. It's in this lot. There's a cooler in the back. Help yourself to a beer, whatever." I'm like, sweet. So me and Kevin get there. We go to the game. Go to the parking lot afterwards. There it is, Real Fightwear, Chris's truck. "Hey, there it is, Kev. Come on over." Hop up in the back. Drop down the tailgate. Hop in the back. Pop open. Crack a beer. Give Kevin a beer. Open it up, and there's 4 guys just literally like a fucking sitcom. They're just like, "Hey guys, you know whose truck that is?"
Okay, I was like, wait, they thought you were stealing
Yeah,
stuff.
I was
right?
like, "Yeah, no, I know. Me and Chris might have punched him Tuesday, I think." Like, okay, all right. Well, Chris had apparently had this horrible rep as this goon of destructive properties in these hockey leagues. Is this knuckle smashing bad motherfucker? I'm like, "No, we fight all the time." And I go, "We're cool." And then he comes out, I was like, "Yeah, you're good," and we all had a good time. And it was just really funny because I got to peek into his other world. And,
Of hockey?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Of being hockey goon and beating the shit out of people. I'm like, "Hey, he's mid-tier amongst us. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, not even the best one here.
he's not even the best in the room." Like, and they were horrified of him.
Yeah.
It was just a fun little juxtaposition, something like that. I'm using a lot of big words today.
Well, thanks, guys.
A lot of good times.
Not so bad, right?
No.
We already did an hour.
An
That's
hour.
pretty
Yeah.
good, right?
The key is shutting us up. Is the real issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the hard part. That's the hard part.
We didn't even touch running a business together.
No, we didn't. We just talked to
Next time.
Yeah, next
Yeah.
part 2.
Yeah, we're gonna turn the mics off now. That'd be the only way I can get you shut up.